Now, Washington Mornings on the Mall. At AM 630. WMAL.
8:37 on WMAL, where Washington comes to talk. Brian Wilson, Brian Neiman. On the phone is Ken Cuccinelli, the Attorney General of the Commonwealth of Virginia. Now, Attorney General Cuccinelli, you were among those who filed lawsuits saying that you felt like the ObamaCare law was unconstitutional. We stand today with a very real possibility that the Supreme Court will hand down some kind of decision about the constitutionality of Obamacare. What is at stake right now for the Commonwealth of Virginia?
Well, it's hard to overstate the fundamental nature of this case. We really are back at the foundation of the Constitution and arguing about the outer limits of what our federal government can do. And it is the word unprecedented barely begins to describe the exercise of power the federal government is trying to conduct here by ordering you and me and everybody else to buy their chosen health insurance, whether we want to or not. And Justice Kennedy's first question on the second day of the oral argument to the Solicitor General, can we compel people into commerce in order to regulate them? And that's exactly what's happening here. It's never happened in the history of this country. It didn't happen. The British didn't try to do it when we were colonists, is how unprecedented it is. So there's an awful lot at stake. I would go so far as to say that if we were to lose this case, we really live in a different America than we thought we grew up in. Because federalism would be dead and the extent of federal power would be far more unlimited than anyone ever imagined.
All right, so let's say it is struck down in some limited fashion or in full fashion. How will the Commonwealth have to react? I mean, there are some implications for that, aren't there?
Well, let's just start with budget dollars. If the Medicaid piece stands and Congress doesn't alter it using budget language, which they can easily do, that's $200 million a year hole in our budget over the next 10 years, and that's assuming federal cost estimates are right, and they're never right. So, when you think about a state like Virginia where we're struggling and we're falling ever farther behind in transportation funding, to see that kind of a federally imposed hole, that's an extraordinarily big problem for us.
Do you think that if the ruling comes down today or maybe Thursday, that this is the ultimate say in this case, or is there a possibility of it going back to the Supreme Court in another fashion? It's the
ultimate say on the mandate. There are other things. As then Speaker Pelosi said, now that we've passed the bill, we can find out what's in it.
Right.
I'm not sure how true she intended to be, but we have, nobody knew when they voted for the bill that churches would be ordered to violate their precepts by buying, forced abortion pills and contraception that go against their religion. The Catholic Church, institutions of the Catholic Church have sued all over the country. Do you really think anybody 2.5 years ago thought that was part of this bill? Well, lo and behold, now we have it.
So what is your feeling? What's your feeling? I mean, I know nobody likes to predict it.
There will be other lawsuits. The Catholic Church's lawsuit against the religious liberty elements of the bill are one, but that comes from a rulemaking that is based on the authority of the bill.
Right.
So there's another 200 or so rulemakings left to be done. I can't possibly imagine that someone like Kathleen Sebelius is going to get through all of those without violating the law again.
Do you think that the individual mandate will be struck down?
I tend to believe that the individual mandate will be struck down, and I will tell you that from a constitutional perspective, winning and losing is judged exclusively on whether or not the individual mandate stands or falls. If it stands, we have a different country than we thought we grew up in. If it falls, we have finally stopped the legal ball rolling downhill for more federal government power from the New Deal.
You know, in reading some of the stories that are been done over the weekend in preparation for this big ruling by the High Court, there are a lot of stories that suggest that the Obama administration and all of those who were involved in preparing the law honestly never considered the possibility that this might be unconstitutional.
Oh, I think that's right. I mean, that's where you get a response from a Speaker Pelosi. Where do you think you get constitutional authority to do this? And her answer is, are you kidding? Are you serious?
Mm-hmm.
They really never did think about it. I mean, the Senate ordered up their Congressional Research Service report on is it constitutional, and that was in the summer of 2009, and they came back and said, well, the individual mandate is constitutionally untested. It is the most questionable part of the legislation, and use phrases like that. I can tell you, I'm a lawyer. You don't write that down for your client unless it's a much more serious situation. The bad news is always delivered by phone. And they wrote that down. They said this is constitutionally questionable.
Mm-hmm.
For them to do that, I interpret that to mean they thought it was unconstitutional.
All right, let me ask.
That was their pretty parsing of it.
I want to turn to what's going on in Charlottesville at the University of Virginia, where the president, Teresa Sullivan, was essentially ousted by the Board of Supervisors, the Board of Visitors there. I know the governor, Bob McDonnell's kind of stayed out of it, but has said he wants a decision one way or the other tonight or tomorrow night when there's a vote. Do you have confidence in Teresa Sullivan as the president? Should she be reinstated? Should she have been fired, basically?
Well, look, in these circumstances, the Attorney General's office is the lawyer for the Board of Visitors. The Board of Visitors, under the law of Virginia, is the university, and they set all these policies. Whether you think their decision is a good one or a bad one, my office is giving them legal advice. So that's not the kind of thing I comment on. I don't comment on my client's decisions while they're in the mid-course when my office is advising them and staying between the rails of the law.
Okay. You want to be governor, though. Would you have confidence in Teresa Sullivan if you were the governor of Virginia?
Well, remember, it is the boards that appoint these folks, and I would say this generically, as far as the potential for me being governor, is I expect boards of visitors to run universities, not the universities to run boards of visitors. And whether they're substantively right or wrong, I expect boards of visitors to make hard decisions. There's a reason that they are independent and somewhat insulated from accountability. Whether you like that policy or not, that's the way we've set up governance of our higher ed in Virginia. And, you know, I will tell you that most of our universities really find the boards of visitors an annoyance that they have to tolerate, and rather than something along the lines of a board of directors of a corporation that's actually in charge of the place.
Is Sullivan reinstated, do you think? Just quick yes or no.
Well, I don't want to speculate on that. I'm going to leave that to my client.
I had to try.
Well, A for effort. I will tell you, we started on the healthcare case. It really is nearly impossible to overstate the importance of this case. We, as you noted, we were in first in Virginia, and it's very appropriate for Virginia, home of Thomas Jefferson, James Madison, Patrick Henry, to have been on point on this.
All right,
this is the most important case in a very, very, very long time.
Ken Cuccinelli, it's always good to have you on. Thanks very much. We appreciate it.
Good to talk.